From the moment I first opened my eyes to the mysteries of life, I sensed that something immense and powerful stirred within me. It wasn't something I could easily see or touch, but I could feel it, humming silently in the depths of my soul. I often wondered if others felt it too, this hidden force waiting to be discovered. As I grew older, the sensation only grew stronger, more persistent, the whispering that I was meant for something far greater than what my ordinary senses could grasp. Deep down, I knew this force wasn't just part of me, it was me. They told me life was limited, that power belonged only to the few, but I could never truly believe them. In the quiet hours of the night when the world fell silent and the stars seemed to lean closer, I could almost hear a voice urging me to remember, to awaken. I began to realize this wasn't the ordinary power of the mind or the frail will of the body. No, this was a sacred power, a force beyond the reach of mortal understanding, lying dormant in the secret chambers of my heart, waiting for the right moment. At first, I tried to summon it with my thoughts, thinking that if I just believed hard enough, it would rise. I thought positive affirmations and dreams of success would bring it to life, but no matter how hard I tried, it remained elusive, like a shadow dancing just beyond the edges of my sight. It became clear to me that thought alone, as powerful as it was, could only unlock the door. It was not the power itself. There was something deeper, something far greater, quietly waiting behind that door for me to find it. And then there were days when fear would creep in. What if this power was a lie? What if I was nothing more than flesh and bone, struggling pointlessly against the tides of life? Doubt gnawed at the edges of my mind like a slow poison. I wondered if I was foolish to believe. Yet just when my hope seemed most fragile, something inside would flare, a stubborn ember that refused to die. I couldn't explain it. It was a knowing beyond logic, a certainty that despite everything, the infinite lived within me, silently calling me forward. One evening, after countless restless nights, something shifted. As I sat alone beneath a sky heavy with stars, I felt it. A surge of life. A tremor of power so profound it nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. It wasn't from outside. It erupted from within. I realized then that the universe wasn't something separate from me. It was part of me, breathing through me, alive in my very being. I wasn't an isolated fragment. I was connected to the source, the divine wellspring of all life and power. I was infinite, and I always had been. But the universe does not reveal its treasures to the unprepared. I had to prove myself worthy. It wasn't enough to simply want this power. I had to earn it, by surrendering every selfish desire, every shallow ambition, every clinging fear that chained me to the ground. Only by yielding completely could I rise. Yielding felt terrifying at first, like stepping off a cliff into emptiness. But something told me that the fall would become flight, that in losing my small self, I would awaken the vastness sleeping within. I had to trust or remain forever asleep. In secret, ancient wisdom whispered across the ages, warning that spiritual power must not be mishandled. There were stories of those who craved power for selfish gain, who tried to wield the sacred force without love, without humility. Their paths always ended the same, in ruin and despair. As these warnings echoed in my mind, I grew cautious, understanding that true strength was given only to the pure-hearted. I didn't want to become another fallen seeker, blinded by ego. I wanted to rise, to serve, to shine, and so I vowed to walk the narrow, often lonely path. At times, I met others on the journey, restless souls, searching desperately for secrets. They devoured every book, every teaching they could find, convinced that somewhere a shortcut to power existed. But I saw the hollowness in their eyes, the frustration that gnawed at them when the secrets remained just out of reach. They didn't understand that the gate would never open to grasping hands. No, the key was hidden in surrender, in a heart emptied of pride and filled only with longing for truth. Watching them struggle, I realized how rare and how precious real awakening was. The world outside called to me with its distractions, its glittering illusions, its endless promises of quick success. But deep inside I knew the truth, that all true power required sacrifice. I had to turn away from the noise, from the empty chase for wealth and fame. My soul yearned for something richer, something eternal. It wasn't easy. There were days when loneliness cut deep, when I questioned if I was a fool chasing shadows. Yet every time doubt threatened to swallow me, I felt that unbreakable connection stir again, a silent voice whispering, "Keep going, you're close." Slowly, the walls between me and the divine began to crumble. I started to see through the illusions that had bound me for so long. I wasn't separate. I had never been separate. The sense of isolation, the fear of abandonment, it was all a cruel lie. The infinite had been with me in every breath, every heartbeat. It was waiting for me to remember, to claim the inheritance that had always been mine. And as I surrendered more deeply, as I let go of fear and pride, I felt the power of life itself surge through me. It was as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes. Everywhere I looked, I could see traces of the infinite, in the curve of a leaf, in the hush of the wind, in the stillness between my thoughts. I no longer felt like a wandering soul lost in a hostile world. Instead, I was a vital part of a grand, breathing cosmos. The realization filled me with a fierce kind of joy and an overwhelming peace. I wasn't just alive. I was life itself, an extension of the eternal dance, boundless and unbreakable, forever entwined with creation. But with this revelation came a deeper responsibility. Power without wisdom was a dangerous thing. I began to understand why the universe had hidden these truths until I was ready. I needed to grow in compassion, humility, and patience. Every careless thought, every selfish impulse could ripple outward, shaping the very fabric of reality. My mind was no longer just a private space. It was a conduit through which infinite forces flowed. I had to be vigilant to guard my heart against pride and fear, to use this gift only in service of love, never for selfish ends. The temptations were many. Whispers of ambition, of revenge, of personal glory crept into my mind like thieves in the night. It would have been so easy to use this newfound strength to dominate, to conquer, to feed my ego. But every time I was tempted, something greater within me would stir, a powerful, unwavering voice reminding me of my purpose. This was not a power to be hoarded or wielded for gain. It was a sacred trust, a bridge between the finite and the infinite. I had to remain pure or risk losing it all forever. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, my awareness deepened. I realized that every person I met was also connected to the divine, even if they were blind to it. Every angry outburst, every desperate act was simply the cry of a soul that had forgotten its true nature. Compassion bloomed within me like a mighty river. I could no longer judge others harshly. Instead, I saw their struggles as echoes of my own past blindness. I began to forgive more easily, to love without conditions, to serve without expecting anything in return. My spirit expanded. There were moments, however, when shadows returned. Doubt would creep back in, testing my faith, whispering old fears into my ear. Was this all just a beautiful illusion? Had I deceived myself into believing I was something greater than I really was? During those nights of torment, I clung to the smallest sparks of light inside me. I reminded myself that even the sun is hidden during storms, yet it never ceases to shine. My connection to the infinite could never truly be broken. It was I who sometimes turned away, blinded by fear, not by truth. One night, while meditating beneath a restless sky, I had a vision more vivid than any dream. I saw myself standing before a vast, radiant ocean, endless, shimmering, alive. I was terrified to step forward, yet I knew I must. As I walked into the water, it did not drown me. Instead, it filled me, becoming part of me, and I became part of it. I realized then that I was not meant to stand apart from this divine source. I was meant to surrender completely, to dissolve every illusion of separateness until only unity remained. I wept. From that moment on, my life changed in ways I could never have imagined. Fear lost its grip on me. Challenges that once seemed insurmountable became opportunities to grow. I no longer prayed for an easy life. Instead, I prayed for strength to meet whatever came with courage and grace. People around me began to notice something different. They asked me how I stayed so calm, so full of hope, even when storms raged. I smiled, knowing that no matter what happened on the surface, beneath it all, I was anchored to something eternal, something unshakable and pure. I realized, too, that my thoughts shaped my reality far more powerfully than I had ever known. Every belief, every expectation acted like a magnet, drawing experiences to match its frequency. When I doubted, life became heavy and dark. When I trusted, Doors opened in ways that defied explanation. I saw clearly that faith wasn't blind, it was a creative force, calling unseen possibilities into being. I began to think with greater care, choosing thoughts that aligned with love, hope, and courage. I became an architect of my destiny, shaping my future not through fear but through divine trust. Yet, even now, the journey continues. Awakening is not a final destination, but an unfolding, a constant deepening into the infinite mystery. Every day brings new lessons, new tests, new opportunities to align more fully with the divine life pulsing within me. I have learned that true power lies not in controlling life, but in surrendering to its sacred flow. And in that surrender, there is more freedom, more joy, more strength than I ever dreamed possible. I am no longer the lost wanderer I once was. I am a conscious creator, a spark of the eternal flame. So now, whenever I face darkness, I do not despair. I remember who I am. I remember that infinite life and power are not distant, unreachable things. They are my birthright, my true nature, woven into the very essence of my being. I walk through this world not as a victim, but as a luminous thread in the tapestry of the divine. And I know, with every breath I take, that I am connected to a love so vast, so fierce, and so eternal, that nothing, no failure, no fear, no shadow, can ever truly separate me from it.